was given to a savage for breaking traditions. What happens when a woman refuses to follow the rules carved by the men of her town? What if the person they feared the most was the only one who could truly see her? My name is Clara Whitaker, and in 1874, in the shadow of the Black Hills, I was condemned, not by law, but by tradition. I spoke when no woman was allowed. I denied a marriage no woman could refuse. My punishment? To be given to a savage. But what he did shocked everyone. This is my story, every word of it true. I can still feel the rope cutting into my wrists and still taste the dust kicked up by the gathering crowd. The wooden post pressed against my spine like a cross, and perhaps that's what it was meant to be, my crucifixion for the sin of having a voice. I watched Elder Morrison stand before me with his weathered Bible, his voice carrying across Deadwood's main square like the sound of judgment itself. She has brought shame upon our community. She has refused the sacred bond of marriage. She has spoken against the natural order. I heard the crowd murmur their agreement, but I caught glimpses of uncertainty in some faces. I saw my mother weeping behind her veil, but she didn't speak for me. She had learned long ago that silence was survival. I moved my lips silently, forming words they couldn't hear but couldn't stop. I am not your property. That's when I saw him. At the edge of the crowd, barely visible in the shadows between buildings, I spotted a figure that made grown men cross themselves. Mop, they called him. The Comanche warrior who haunted their nightmares. His presence felt like smoke to me. There, but not there, substantial yet ethereal. By the authority vested in tradition, I heard Morrison continue, Clara Whitaker is hereby given to the savage. May God have mercy on her soul. Across the distance, my eyes found Mop's. In that moment, something passed between us. Not words, not promises, but a recognition. I realized we were both outcasts. We were both free. I found the forest darker than I expected, cooler. My legs shook from the ordeal, from fear, from the uncertainty of what came next. I had heard the stories, what savages did to white women. I prepared myself for violence, for degradation, for death. Instead, I felt the gentle pressure of a sharp blade against the rope. One stroke, clean and precise, and my hands were free. I looked up to see Mop studying my wounded wrists with eyes like dark water, deep, unreadable, but somehow gentle. I noticed he didn't speak. He didn't need to. His actions said everything to me. From a leather pouch, I watched him pull herbs I didn't recognize and begin treating my wounds. His touch felt careful and professional. I realized this was a man who understood healing as well as warfare. Why aren't you? I started to whisper, then stopped. What had I expected? Violence? Rape? The monster the townspeople had painted. Him to be? I saw Mop meet my eyes briefly, then look away. He left a bundle wrapped in soft deerskin beside me. I could see it contained food, water, and a small blanket. Then he spoke, but not in English. The words sounded musical to me, flowing like water over stones. Later, I would learn what he said. Freedom is not given. It is taken. Then he was gone, vanished into the forest like morning mist. I stared at the bundle, confusion replacing fear. What kind of savage was this? I woke to dew covering me like a second skin. The fire I had built from watching my father's countless camping trips still smoldered, small but proud. I found the bundle Mop left contained more than food. Dried meat that tasted of smoke and herbs, berries sweet as candy, clean water in a carved gourd that felt warm to my touch. I built up the fire carefully, feeling my movements were being watched by unseen eyes. I could sense his presence like a warm hand on my shoulder, protective rather than threatening. A rustle in the nearby bushes made me grab for a sharp rock. Who's there? My voice cracked with lingering fear. Silence answered, but when I looked closer, I found fresh water pooled in a hollow stone. I saw wild herbs arranged with deliberate care. I discovered a small deer hide, soft and clean, placed, where I would surely see it. My eyes scanned the tree line. I couldn't see anything moving, but the feeling of being watched over, not hunted, but guarded, settled into my bones like warmth from the fire. "What kind of savage are you?" I whispered to the forest. The wind through the leaves sounded almost like laughter to me. The smell of wood smoke took me back 13 years, to when I was 10 and the world seemed full of possibilities rather than prohibitions. I remembered sitting under our oak tree, reading from my grandmother's leather-bound book of poetry. My finger had traced each word with the reverence of a monk copying scripture. The words had been magic to me, each one a key to unlock worlds I had never seen. She walks in beauty, like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies. I had read aloud, letting Byron's words dance on my tongue. "Clara, put that down this instant." I remembered Mother appearing like an avenging angel, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Had someone seen me? Had someone heard? "Words are for men," she had said, snatching the book away. "A woman's voice should be heard only in prayer and obedience." I had watched her hide the book in the high cupboard beyond my reach. But she couldn't hide the words I had already memorized, couldn't steal the music I had already heard. Back in the forest, I touched the herb's mop. Had left, remembering that moment of loss. But this time, I made a different choice. "I won't be silent again." I whispered to the trees, to the sky, to God if he was listening. Above me, I saw an eagle circling, free, unbound, calling to its mate with a voice that no one could silence. I felt them before I heard them, the vibration of hooves through the earth, the tremor of approaching violence. My brothers were coming. I could picture the scene back at the farm. Jacob would be mounting his bay stallion with the careful precision of a man going to war. Thomas would check his rifle 3 times, the way he always did. Samuel, the youngest, would follow because he had to, not because he wanted to. "Pa says bring her back," I imagined Jacob saying. "Dead or breathing, makes no difference now." I could picture Thomas nodding grimly. That savage's probably had his way with her already. Might be a mercy to put her down. I knew only Samuel would hesitate. "She's still our sister." "Not anymore." I could hear Jacob replying in my mind. "She made her choice when she refused Walter Hayes. Now she's savage property." But I wasn't property. Not anymore. Not ever again. I heard the sound of approaching horses growing louder, and I realized something had fundamentally changed in me. I wasn't preparing to hide. I was preparing to fight. I saw him then, silhouetted against the sky on the ridge above me. I watched. Mop stand motionless as stone, but I could sense there was nothing passive about his stillness. I noticed his bow was strung, an arrow nocked but not drawn. I understood he wasn't hunting. He was guarding. "They're coming for me." I called up to him, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. I saw Mop look down at me, and in that gaze I saw something that stopped my breath, understanding. I realized he knew what it was to be hunted. He knew what it was to run. I watched him hold up one finger, wait. Then he was gone, and I saw him moving along the ridge like wind through grass, positioning himself between me and whatever was coming. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt protected rather than hunted. The irony wasn't lost on me. The savage was shielding me from civilization. I heard the sound of gunshots echo across the valley, distant but definite. My brothers had found something to shoot at. I hoped it wasn't Mop. That night, I dreamed. In smoke and fire, I saw a woman dressed in white buckskin, walking with serene determination toward a raging fire. Her face appeared peaceful to me, accepting, beautiful in a way that transcended physical beauty. I recognized this as inner radiance, the glow of someone who had found absolute freedom. "Some cages can only be opened from the inside," she said, to me in a language I didn't understand, but somehow comprehended. I watched her step into the flame. "Ribs. Found her. Over here." I heard Jacob's voice carry through the forest like a war cry. I ran. No thought, no plan, just pure animal instinct driving me through underbrush that tore at my skirts and scratched my face. I heard another shot. This one found me, burning through my leg like liquid fire. I stumbled, feeling blood seep through my torn fabric, but I kept moving. I saw the carved woman fall from my grip, and I watched her roll away into the leaves, my protection scattered like. My courage. She's hit. Move in. I heard Thomas shout from behind me. I limped to the massive pine I had noticed earlier, pressing my back against its trunk and trying to control my ragged breathing. I realized this was it. This was how I would die, hunted down by my own brothers like a rabid animal. Then I felt strong arms lift me from behind. I started to scream, but a gentle hand covered my mouth. Trust, I heard Mop whisper in my ear. And God help me, I did. I felt him carry me swiftly along a hidden path that seemed to appear beneath his feet. My blood dripped on his arm, but he didn't slow, didn't falter. Behind us, I could hear my brothers crash through the forest like bulls, making enough noise to wake the dead. I found the cave was larger than it appeared from outside, lit by shafts of sunlight that streamed through natural openings in the rock. I felt Mop lay me gently on soft furs that smelled of sage and cedar. But it was the walls that stole my breath. I saw ancient drawings covering every surface, handprints in red ochre, animals in black charcoal, human figures in pigment's eye. Couldn't identify. And there, directly across from where I lay, I discovered the image that made my heart stop, a woman bound with rope. But the rope was dissolving into smoke, and the woman was becoming air. What is this place? I whispered. Sacred. I heard Mop reply in English, his accent thick but his meaning clear to me. Women come here when the world becomes too small. I watched him begin tending to my wound with practiced hands. I could see the bullet had only grazed me, but I had lost blood. As he worked, I heard him speak softly. You speak English, I said, surprised by this discovery. Many languages. Survival, I heard him respond. I studied his face as he cleaned my wound. I could see there was gentleness there that contradicted everything I had been taught about his people. His touch felt healing to me, not harmful. His presence seemed like protection, not threat. Why are you helping me? I asked. I saw Mop pause in his work, his eyes finding the cave painting of the bound woman. My sister, he said simply. She was given away to white settlers. She chose fire instead. I felt the silence that followed was heavy with shared understanding. The woman in my dream, Ayana, I would learn he called her. Eternal Blossom. I realized she had visited me because I needed courage, and her brother was giving me the gift. She could no longer give herself. I watched Mop show me how to make healing tea from the herbs he had gathered, his movements precise and reverent to my eyes. I could see each plant had a purpose. Each preparation was a ritual. Plant medicine, I heard him explain. White man thinks Comanche savage, but we heal what we can heal. I watched him work, remembering something I had almost forgotten. My grandmother knew herbs. Before she married, she was going to be a doctor. What stopped her? I heard him ask. The question was simple, but I knew the answer was the story of every woman I knew. The same thing that stops all women. Men who believe God gave them ownership. I saw Mop nod, and I understood this transcended cultural differences. My people have women warriors, women chiefs, but white man's law, it spreads like disease. I thought of my mother, my sisters-in-law, the women of Deadwood, all of them brilliant in their own ways, all of them forced into silence. What happens when the disease spreads too far? Then you find the cure, I heard him say, handing me the steaming cup. Or you die trying. I tasted the tea. It was bitter, but it warmed me from the inside out. I felt strength returning to my limbs, clarity to my thoughts. That night, I found Mop sitting guard at the cave entrance, bow across his knees. I could hear the forest alive with night sounds. Owls calling, small animals rustling through leaves, the distant howl of wolves. But I could tell he could distinguish between natural noise and human-made threats. I moved quietly to sit beside him, favoring my injured leg. "Can't sleep either?" I asked. "Sleep is luxury. Vigilance is survival," I heard him respond. I looked out at the darkness, trying to see what he saw, hear what he heard. "How long can we hide?" "Until you decide what freedom looks like," I heard him say. The question hit me like cold water. I realized I had never been asked what I wanted before. Every decision in my life had been made by men. My father, my brothers, Elder Morrison, even Walter Hayes, who had claimed me before I knew I could be claimed. "I've never been asked what I wanted before," I admitted. "Then now is good time to learn," I heard him reply. In the distance, I heard a wolf howl, lonely but unashamed, calling out its truth to the world. I envied that wolf its voice. By firelight, we shared stories. I felt the intimacy wasn't romantic. It was deeper than that. I sensed two souls recognizing each other across the artificial boundaries of race and culture. "Walter Hayes," I began, the name bitter on my tongue. "The man they wanted me to marry. He hid his first wife. Everyone knew, but she died in childbirth, so it didn't matter anymore." "You said no," I heard Mop observe. I said no. The memory still amazed me. First time I ever said no to anything. It felt like breathing for the first time. "Freedom has price." "Always," I heard him say. I turned the question back to him. "What did your freedom cost?" I watched Mop touch a scar on his chest. Old, deep, the kind that never quite heals. Everything I was before. I understood. I realized we were both orphans now, cut off from our tribes by the simple act of choosing ourselves over submission. "Do you regret it?" I asked. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then I heard him say, "I regret that world made it necessary. I felt dawn came too soon and not soon enough." I emerged from the cave walking steadier, my leg healing under Mop's careful ministrations. I looked out at the forest stretching endlessly in all directions. Beautiful, dangerous, free. "I can't hide forever," I said, though part of me wanted to try. "No," I heard Mop agree, appearing beside me like a shadow given form. "But you can choose how you face world." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You can return as victim, or return as woman who knows her worth." I looked at my hands, no longer soft from drawing room life, but strong from survival. I could see they were capable hands that could fight. "And if they try to force me into marriage again, then you know you have place to run," I heard him say. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was hope. And I was learning that sometimes hope is enough to start a revolution. Meanwhile, I knew my brothers had found my original campsite. I could picture Jacob kneeling beside the cold fire, reading the ground like scripture. I could imagine him there, jaw tight with determination, eyes scanning every detail. Two sets of tracks here, his and hers. Which way did they go? I could hear Thomas asking in my mind, rifle ready. I envisioned Jacob standing slowly, his face darkening as he processed what he saw. He's carrying her. She's wounded. Maybe she's dead already. I could imagine Samuel suggesting hopefully. No. I could picture Jacob's voice being flat, certain. He'd leave the body if she was dead. He's keeping her alive for other reasons. I knew the implication would hang heavy between them. In their minds, I was being defiled, corrupted, destroyed. They couldn't imagine that I was being healed. But I was getting stronger with every hour, more myself than I had ever been. The irony would have been funny to me if it weren't so tragic. I remember Mop teaching me in the cave, hand pressed to my face, remembering. But now I realized the memory had lost its power to shame me. I was no longer that frightened girl. I had become a woman who had learned to fight. "Your brothers will not give up," I heard Mop say as we prepared for another day of hiding. They search with anger, not wisdom. Angry men make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? I asked, checking my bow with new familiarity. They hunt what they expect to find. They do not see what is really there. I heard him explain. I understood. They were hunting the Clara who had been tied to that post. Frightened, helpless, broken. They couldn't conceive of the woman I was becoming. When do we make our move? I asked. When you are ready to show them who you have become, I heard him say. I knocked an arrow and drew back the string, feeling my form was now fluid and sure. I watched the arrow split the previous day's mark down the center. I'm ready, I declared. I bathed my wounds in the forest stream, washing away the last traces of the woman I had been. When I emerged from the water, I could feel I moved differently, sure-footed, predatory, dangerous. I knew Mop waited nearby, respectfully distant but watchful. They'll expect to find a victim, I said, braiding my hair in a new pattern, not the modest style required by Deadwood society, but something fierce and practical. What will they find instead? I heard him ask. A woman who chooses her own fate, I answered. I caught my reflection in the stream and barely recognized myself. This wasn't the Clara Whitaker who had been condemned 3 days ago. I had become someone new, someone who belonged to herself. I walked deliberately into the open meadow where my brothers would surely see me. But I wasn't running anymore. I stood straight, the bow across my back, waiting. I could hear the thundering of hooves growing closer, and with it came the moment of truth. Would I run again, or would I stand? I stood. When they burst from the tree line, Jacob in the lead, Thomas and Samuel flanking, I knew they expected to find their sister. Instead, they found a stranger wearing Clara's face. I watched them pull up short, horses snorting and stamping, confusion clear on their faces. This wasn't the broken woman they had come to rescue or destroy. Clara, I heard Jacob say carefully. Thank God. We've come to take you home. I am home, I replied, my voice steady as stone. I felt the standoff stretch between us like a taut wire. I watched my brothers sit their horses in a semicircle, but I could sense their usual dominance felt hollow here in the wild. Sister, you don't know what you're saying, I heard Thomas say, his voice gentler than usual. That savage has addled your mind. My mind has never been clearer, I responded. I saw Samuel look around nervously. Clara, put down the bow. You don't know how to use it. I drew an arrow and knocked it in one fluid motion, aiming just past Samuel's ear. When I released, I watched the arrow part his hair and embed in the tree behind him with a solid thunk. Want to bet? I asked. I could see the shock on their faces was almost comical. Their little sister, meek, obedient Clara, had become something they didn't recognize. I saw Jacob's hand move toward his rifle, but I already had another arrow. Knocked. I wouldn't, I said calmly. Clara, this isn't you. This is what he's done to you. I heard Jacob say desperately. He showed me who I always was underneath your rules. I replied. Come home, I heard Thomas plead. Pa will forgive everything. If you just come home. To marry Walter Hayes? To birth his children while he beats me? To spend my life in silence? I asked. It's the natural order, I heard Samuel say desperately. It's how things are supposed to be. According to who? My voice rose with years of suppressed rage. You? Pa? God. I drew back the string, feeling the power coiled in the bow, in my arms, in my newly awakened spirit. I've heard God's voice, and it sounds nothing like yours, I declared. That's when I saw Mop emerge from the forest behind them, silent as death itself. I watched my brothers not notice him until he spoke. She is under my protection, I heard him say. I saw them spin in their saddles, hands reaching for weapons they suddenly realized they might not be fast enough to use. I would not, I heard. Mop continued calmly. Your sister learns quickly. You would be dead before your guns clear leather. Is this what you want? I heard Jacob demand, his voice cracking with desperation. To be as savage as woman? I'm not his woman. I'm not any man's woman. I'm my own, I declared. I could see the concept was so foreign to them they couldn't process it. In their world, women belonged to fathers, then husbands, then sons. The idea of a woman belonging to herself was literally incomprehensible to them. Clara, I heard Thomas say, his voice thick with something that might have been grief. If you don't come back with us, you can never come back. Ever. Pa will disown you. Good, I replied. What about Ma? I heard Samuel ask desperately. She cries every night. For the first time, I felt my resolve waver. I loved my mother, despite everything, but I couldn't save her from her chains by putting them on myself. Ma had the same choice once. She chose comfort over freedom. I choose differently, I said. You choose savagery over civilization. I heard Jacob spit. I heard Mop's voice, quiet but firm. Your civilization gives women to men like cattle. In my world, women are warriors. Which is savage? I could see my brothers had no answer for that. I felt the tension stretch tighter. I could see Jacob making his decision, reading it in the set of his shoulders, the tightening of his jaw. Then we'll take you back in a pine box, I heard him say, raising his rifle. At least then you'll have a Christian burial. Jacob, no, I cried, but I could see Thomas and Samuel were drawing their weapons too. The men I had once loved, had once looked up to, were prepared to kill me rather than let me be free. Your choice, I heard Mop say quietly. Fight or run. I looked at my brothers, men who had taught me to climb trees, who had protected me from bullies, who had once carried me on their shoulders. Now I could see they were prepared to murder me for the crime of choosing my own life. I never wanted this, I whispered. Then come home, I heard Jacob say. But I knew home was a cage, and I had learned to fly. I drew my bow. I heard gunshots explode across the meadow like thunder. I rolled behind a fallen log as I watched bark explode around me. I saw Mop move like smoke, impossible to pin down, his arrows finding their marks with deadly precision. I watched Thomas's horse scream and go down, throwing him hard against a boulder. I saw Samuel's rifle jam at the crucial moment. The gods of war were not on their side, but I knew Jacob was a veteran of Indian wars. His shots came close, too close. I felt one bullet part my hair, another tear through my sleeve. The ridge. Go, I heard Mop shout. Not without you. I called back, sending an arrow toward Jacob that made him dive for cover. That's when I saw the blood blooming across Mop's shoulder. I could see he'd been hit, but he kept fighting, kept protecting me even as his strength flowed out onto the ground. I watched Mop stumble, saw his bow drop from nerveless fingers. I could see my brothers were converging on him, murder in their eyes. Stop, I screamed, stepping into the open with my hands raised. I'll come with you. Just don't hurt him. I heard the gunfire cease. I watched Jacob keep his rifle trained on Mop while Thomas and Samuel flanked me. This is my choice, I said, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. Mine to make. But I didn't drop my weapon. Even in surrender, I held on to the symbol of my newfound strength. Please, I whispered to Mop. Go. I saw him struggle to his feet, blood flowing freely from his shoulder. Not without you, I heard him say. This is my choice, I repeated. I felt the words hang in the air like a prayer. That's when I saw Samuel do something that surprised everyone, including himself. I watched him throw down his rifle. No more. I heard him say, his voice shaking. I won't be part of this anymore. Samuel, Jacob's voice still reached me, raised in fury and betrayal. Where can we go? I asked as we climbed higher into the mountains. North, I heard Mop reply, pressing a cloth to his shoulder. Canada. My people have settlements there. Places white law doesn't reach. Will they accept me? I asked. They will accept woman who fights for her freedom, I heard him say. I looked back once at the smoke rising from deadwood in the distance. It looked smaller from here to me, less significant. A tiny settlement trying to impose its will on an infinite wilderness. Then I faced forward, toward the unknown, toward whatever freedom might look like. I traveled for days through wilderness that grew wilder with each mile. I could feel my transformation continuing. My skin darkened from sun and wind, my muscles strengthened from constant movement, my senses sharpened by necessity. I listened to Mop teach me as we walked. This plant stops bleeding. This one prevents infection. This one eases pain. How do you know so much about healing? I asked. My mother was medicine woman. I was supposed to be warrior, but I learned both. I heard him reply. The best of both worlds, I observed. Sometimes, worlds must be mixed to survive, I heard him say. I thought about that as we climbed higher into country no white person had ever seen. Maybe survival meant becoming something new, something that didn't fit into the old categories. Around our small fire that night, we shared food and stories. I felt the intimacy between us had deepened, but it remained based on mutual respect, rather than possession or desperation. Do you ever regret taking me from Deadwood? I asked. I did not take you. You chose to come, I heard him reply. You know what I mean. I watched him stay quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. I regret that world made it necessary. I understood. Neither of us had asked for this conflict, but both of us had risen to meet it. I realized we were casualties of a war between two ways of seeing the world, one that saw people as property, another that saw them as souls. What happens when we reach your people? I asked. You become who you choose to become, I heard him say. I felt the phrase was starting to feel like a prayer, a promise, a possibility I had never dared imagine. The next morning, I tended to Mop's shoulder wound with the herbs he had taught me to use. I could feel my touch was gentle but sure. I was learning the medicine woman's art along with the warrior's. It's healing well, I observed. Good teacher, I heard him say. Good student, I replied, smiling. For a moment, I felt we were just two people caring for each other. The weight of our circumstances lifted, and I glimpsed what peace might feel like. Clara, I heard him say softly, when we reach my people, what will you do? I don't know. What does a free woman do? I asked. Whatever she chooses, I heard him reply. I realized the concept was still foreign, but it was becoming less frightening and more exhilarating with each repetition. I watched the storm come out of nowhere, dark clouds gathering with supernatural speed, wind that howled like the voices of the dead, lightning that split the sky like God's own rifle fire. We took shelter in a shallow cave, and I felt us pressed together for warmth as the world ended around us. The storm felt apocalyptic to me, as if nature itself was protesting the collision of our two worlds. Is this normal? I shouted over the thunder. Nothing about this journey is normal, I heard Mop shout back. I saw lightning illuminate our faces, determined, unbroken, alive despite everything trying to kill us. In that moment, I felt more connected to the earth, to the sky, to the wild heart of creation than I ever had sitting in a church pew. In the heart of the tempest, she came to me again. I saw Ayana, dressed in white buckskin, walking calmly through the lightning and wind. But this time, I wasn't passive. I walked toward her deliberately, unafraid. You understand now, I heard her say in perfect English. Understand what? I asked. Freedom is not given by others. It is claimed by the one who needs it. But at what cost? I wondered. Everything that was never truly yours to begin with, I heard her reply. I woke with new resolve burning in my chest. I could feel the storm was passing, but the fire inside me was just beginning. When dawn came, washed clean and brilliant after the storm, I made a decision that surprised even me. I can't run forever, I said as we prepared to continue our climb. What do you mean? I heard Mop ask. Other women. Back in Deadwood, in every town like it. They're still trapped. I saw Mop stop walking and look at me with eyes that had seen too much. One person cannot change world. No, I agreed. But one person can start. I knew he recognized the look in my eyes. The same expression his sister had worn before she chose fire over surrender. It was the look of someone who had found something worth dying for. At the highest point of our journey, with endless forest stretching below us in Canada just days away, I stopped. I have to go back, I said. I could see Mop wasn't surprised. I know. You knew before I did. Some spirits cannot rest in peace while others suffer, I heard him say. I looked back toward the distant smoke of civilization, Deadwood and 100 towns like it, where women lived in cages built from tradition and fear. Will you come with me? I asked. Where you go, I go. We are bound now. Not by rope, but by choice, I heard him reply. I understood the distinction mattered. Everything we did from this moment forward would be because we chose it, not because it was forced upon us. We prepared for our return like warriors preparing for battle. I practiced with my bow until my accuracy was flawless, until I could hit a playing card at 50 yards. I felt Mop teach me to move silently, to read tracks, to understand the language of the forest. You will not be same woman who left Deadwood. I heard him observe as I split another arrow down the center with my shot. Good. She was weak, I replied. No, I heard him correct gently. She was strong enough to break free. Now you must be strong enough to break others free. I felt the magnitude of what I was choosing settle over me like a mantle. This wasn't just about my freedom anymore. It was about showing other women that freedom was possible. We retraced our steps toward Deadwood, but this time I led. I moved with confidence through terrain that had once seemed impossible, reading the forest like a familiar book. I watched animals as we passed, deer, eagles, wolves. I noticed none fled. I could sense they recognized something wild and untamable in both of us, something that belonged to the wilderness rather than civilization. What if they kill us? I asked as we walked. Then we die free, I heard Mop reply. What if they don't listen? Then we make them listen, I heard him say. I found these simple answers to complex questions carried the weight of absolute commitment. We were past the point of compromise. Hidden in the trees above Deadwood, I observed the town I had once called home. It looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile to me, like a collection of dolls' houses pretending to be permanent. Look, I whispered, pointing to the town square. I could see several women gathering water from the well. I noticed their movements were cautious, fearful, the choreographed dance of the oppressed. But I sensed there was something else, a tension, an awareness, as if they were waiting for something. I saw one woman look up, Mary Chun, Walter Hayes' former housemaid. I watched her stare directly at our hiding place. And for a moment, I thought we were discovered. But instead of sounding an alarm, I saw her nod almost imperceptibly and continue her work. She sees us, I murmured. She has been waiting, I heard Mop reply. That night, I watched Mary approach our camp alone, moving carefully through the darkness with the skill of someone who had learned to be invisible. Clara Whitaker? I heard her whisper. I emerged from the shadows, bow in hand, but not threatening. Mary Chun, I remember you. Everyone thinks you're dead. Your brothers came back alone, I heard her say. What did they say? I asked. That the savage killed you, had his way with you first, then killed you.